Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I make it approximately 3:45 p.m, so we'll begin. Welcome to the latest Sam Learning educational webinar for schools, and it looks like we do have a full house as usual, which is fantastic. So thank you to everyone who has taken the time out of their busy schedules to spend time with us here today, because we really do appreciate it. In today's webinar, we will be looking at one of the major issues that continues to plague schools due to COVID-19 and how schools are deploying metaphorical safety nets through technology to not only solve this issue, but to catch students from falling any further behind while doing so. My name is Stephanie King. I am the Commercial Director here at Sam Learning, and I'm joined by my colleague and Regional Director, Craig Hendelman, who, time permitting, will be collecting the questions asked throughout today's webinar and answering them a little later on. As always, we do encourage your participation, so if you would like to ask a question to Craig or I, please do use the questions functionality available to you via the control panel that you can find on the right-hand side of your screen. I've also taken the liberty of providing some reader material in the handout section, also found in your control panel, so do feel free to go ahead and download a copy of our latest brochure and evidence reports should you wish to do so. Okay, so if everyone is ready, let's get going, shall we? Over the last 8 months, the world has changed significantly. Numerous industries and sectors have reported massive changes or losses in comparison to previous years, and the education sector, regrettably, has not been omitted from that list. The list of changes that everyone has had to adopt is staggering. Amongst a large list, things that are now part of the new normal in education include social distancing, self-isolation, alert levels, and mandatory face masks. Additional to those mentioned, the need for us to limit learning loss has also introduced many to, or increased the need for, remote teaching and phased returns and learning bubbles, amongst others. And schools are following these guidelines to the letter, yet are still experiencing significant increases in transmission rates to the point where the unwanted outcome of school closures again becomes a very real possibility. Professor Neil Ferguson, whose modelling led to the original lockdown in March, said that the NHS would soon be unable to cope unless the spread of the disease was stemmed. At that point, there were 8,000 people in hospital with the coronavirus, around a third of the peak earlier this year, a number that has now grown to almost 15,000, and that numbers will continue to rise, and if that growth continues as it is, then we'll soon be above that peak level in March, which would likely be unsustainable, which means that new restrictions to contact could enforce school closures for older years, where we know that older teenagers are able to transmit as adults. The news of any further disruption to education is extremely unwelcome and untimely. Schools and teachers are pushed to the absolute limit trying to close attainment gaps and make up for any learning loss caused already. Simply put, teachers are edging perilously close to almost dangerous levels of workload, an unsustainable backlog of ever-widening knowledge gaps, assessments, lessons, feedback, and valuable one-to-one time for students that need it the most. And we must do all we can to safeguard not only the education of our young, but the mental health of the educators we trust to deliver it. We at Sam Learning have, since the beginning of lockdown in March, worked alongside schools, trusts, tutors, and corporate organisations to ensure that we can be there on the front lines, helping where possible to make life that little easier or a lot easier. We partnered with the BBC to provide Sam Learning content free of charge through their bite-sized platform. We welcomed schools who wish to use Sam Learning on a rolling monthly contract with no tie-ins or cancellation charges. And more recently, we released our Sam Learning Guarantee package, where we will guarantee increased attainment at GCSE level, or we will refund every penny spent on Sam Learning. And we will continue to do so because we believe that as wonderful of a selection of resources that you have to choose from to help close the gap and limit learning loss, Sam Learning is one of the only options that is proven to do the job at hand and actually save teachers time in the process. And I want to spend a moment on this webinar discussing time, because time in its infinite nature is by far the most limited resource we have right now as educators, arguably even more so than budget. Now here's a little survey I want to hold, and I would like for all of you on the webinar today to take part. In your control panel, you have a hands up function. I would like you to put your hand up if you feel that you have less time than money within your school. Okay, let's give that a moment and Craig can collate the responses. Okay, so Craig, how many hands up have we had?
Thanks, Steph. Well, out of the 94 people attending this webinar today, 76 have put their hands up. I'll take that the majority are in agreement with you there, Steph.
Great to hear. Okay, hands down, everybody. So the next question I'm going to ask you is to raise your hands if you feel that time can be bought. Go. Okay, so we're going to wait a few seconds for everybody to answer. Okay, Craig, off you go.
So it's a dead split, Steph. So out of the 94 people that we've got here, 42 people have put their hands up. So it would seem that perception in schools, and again, we've got a mixture of people here today, from teaching assistants to head teachers, is mixed. Some believe that time cannot be bought, some believe that it can.
Thanks, Craig. And I can absolutely understand why people would feel that way. However, I am pleased to say that actually time can absolutely be bought, as when buying in the right resources for your school, one of the fundamental aims of that system should be, is it going to make my teachers' lives easier? And I wanted to briefly touch on why Sam Learning is one of those systems. Now, I won't take credit for doing the work here, but the simple mathematics is sound. Teachers at UK secondary schools work roughly 55.7 hours per week and spend 9.4 hours a week marking. That's 17% of their working hours. The average teacher's salary is £28,951. But if we add the employer's national insurance contribution of 13.8%, then that gives an employer cost of £32,946, ignoring all the overheads. 17% of £32,946 is £5,601, and that's what a school spends on marking per teacher per year. The average secondary school employs 65 qualified teachers, so the total cost per school is £364,053. Moving on from the cost element, if we simply multiply the average teacher total with the average amount of time spent marking per week, the maths would say that 611 hours per week are spent marking work, when your teaching staff could be using this time not only doing something more effective in school time, but also something more conducive to better mental health, such as not taking their work home with them outside of working hours. And this is why, fundamentally, three things are more important now than ever before. Learning should be accessible inside and outside of the classroom for all subjects at all key stages. Students' assessments should be self-marking, non-threatening and easy to set. And all work completed by students should clearly identify gaps so that teachers can spend time filling those gaps instead of spending more time than necessary identifying them. Sam Learning does all of these things and more. If you were to put together a checklist of everything that you wanted an online teaching and learning system to do in your school, whose would look like this? 24/7 access, ready-to-use content, identifies gaps clearly and quickly, automated marking, caters for all subjects and all key stages, the ability to create engaging lessons, ability to easily assess, award-winning and proven to work, guaranteed results, free unlimited support and training, automated data upload from an MIS, the ability to group for intervention and differentiation. If they do, then we should most certainly have a further conversation after this webinar. At last week's webinar, we welcomed Leslie Welsh, the head teacher at George Pinder School. And in that conversation, Leslie spoke in depth about how SAM Learning is used in her school to limit learning loss and engage her students to learn throughout lockdown. While Leslie cannot be here with us today to discuss this further, she has been kind enough to provide us with some words of wisdom for any school to heed should they be looking at ways to avoid the current attainment gap widening should COVID-19 continue to play havoc in our schools. So just to give you a bit of context on George Pinder School, George Pinder is 11 to 16 fully inclusive school in the south of Scarborough, in middle of a council estate called Eastfield, with 640 students on roll. 39% of those are in receipt of pupil premium, and 53% of their cohort lived in one of the most disadvantaged areas on the Yadaki rating. We asked Leslie what her most pressing challenges were at the moment, and she said that they have been really lucky so far, as they have, touch wood, not yet had to send home a whole year group bubble. But because COVID is circling at all times, and knowing that staff and students are totally clear on how to use SAM Learning is a lifesaver for her. For students who were not able to be in school for any reason, knowing that they and their teachers can get immediate feedback on tasks they've completed on SAM Learning is a real lifesaver. They've adopted a blended approach for remote learning where classwork is set using the Google Classroom platform, but the vast majority of staff tests, including low-stake assessments and quizzes, are then set on SAM Learning because their students are so used to it. On any day, they have up to 10% of their school community not working inside the school building, so having SAM in place is helping them a great deal. Craig, Leslie mentioned a lot on staff morale. Could you give us an overview of that as well, please?
Yeah, absolutely, Steph. So what Leslie mentioned is that she said that her staff morale and staff workload is a huge thing at George Pinder. She said that she had a feeling that staff would struggle with the move to year group bubbles and the lack of personal classroom, but didn't think that they could have anticipated quite how exhausting staff would have found it. So using SAM Learning there at George Pinder for homework tasks, but also in lessons for low-stake assessments has been really helpful for them. Also knowing that a whole level of marking can be removed from colleagues' days on such a smooth system that they can schedule tasks weeks and months in advance, which they find incredibly powerful as well. She also mentioned how they're treading a really fine line and know that as a school, they need to improve student outcomes. And therefore, there are high demands being made of their staff for students to strive for success, to revise, to do homework and work ever harder. But they feel the need to balance that with how much staff can physically and mentally cope within their lives. And that's where SAM Learning helps them a lot. They also mentioned in terms of catch-up, so the school have found out about which students need specific interventions, and they use the ability in SAM Learning in a far more bespoke way, which they find great and fantastic. They said that too many options that they have found previously forced them into a one-size-fits-all model, which meant that some of the students who have the most challenges just aren't able to access materials and resources without significant support. And that's not the case for SAM Learning due to the ability to differentiate to individual student level and then respond to their own particular needs or better target support for them. In doing so, they found that their students have tackled lockdown work with varying degrees of success, and therefore have done a RAG analysis and analysed the results from low stakes assessments. There are areas that they need to pinpoint, and SAM Learning has helped them to do that.
Thank you, Craig. And what I also noted was that the impact of SAM Learning for Leslie has been phenomenal, which was fantastic to hear. She's a firm believer that success breeds success, and it's helped the school develop real positivity around completing tasks outside of the normal classroom environment. and they have then been able to celebrate academic success. She said that SAM can be used as an exit ticket to check student understanding without having to read through every answer, a chance to assess current progress, a support to narrow gaps, and can be set so intuitively. The school has teachers who are setting a term's worth of revision and intervention at the beginning of the year so they can manage their workload, and she said that's phenomenal. In terms of reading achievement, she has seen an improvement in outcomes over the last year, and all evidence showed that their results would have improved further this year too. The school have used SAM Learning a great deal with their Pupil Premium Flywheel group. Last year, their Pupil Premium lead ran a series of highly successful interventions through SAM Learning, and they are doing the same this year. They've been able to use data from baseline testing to set up intervention groups on SAM Learning and set weekly additional tasks to support and challenge these young people to improve. They then link this with increased parental contact and weekly meetings with students to help them catch up and engage them in their learning. And lastly, Leslie would like to give the following advice to any school considering a purchase of SAM Learning. She said, I have been using SAM Learning at schools and I have worked in over the last 10 years, and each time I have introduced it, it has solved a myriad of problems that the schools had no idea how to tackle. The impact on achievement in each of these schools speaks for itself. So my advice would be, with a carefully designed strategy, which ensures that it remains high profile for students and staff, you will get the best buy-in and it will make a difference to young people's outcomes. She advises to make sure you have one colleague who has the leadership of SAM Learning as a large part of their role, think about where it sits best, and then challenge them on the impact that it can make. She has an associate senior leader who has SAM as part of her Pupil Premium leadership, and she's ensured its profile has never slipped, and that's made all the difference in George Pinder School. Leslie has also kindly offered to speak with anyone who would be interested in SAM Learning to answer any questions from a head teacher's perspective. So if you do want to take advantage of that, please do get in touch on the details that I will be sharing with you all at the end of today's webinar. Okay, so Craig, it looks like the questions panel has been lighting up. So over to you to deal with today's questions.
Lovely, thank you, Steph, and thank you everyone for joining us here today. And thank you for asking some really juicy questions for me to get stuck into. As always, I am limited by time, so I'll answer as many questions as I can at random. If I don't get a chance to answer your question live on this webinar, I will most certainly get back to you soon afterwards. Okay, so first up, there is Carly. So Carly said, okay, you have my attention. Can I confirm that SAM Learning will guarantee our students will make progress in their GCSEs? And if they don't, then we will get our money back. Thanks for joining us, Carly, and thank you for your question. I absolutely get it. In life, there's always some fine print somewhere down at the bottom of the page or spoken ridiculously quickly at the end of the advert, and that's naturally brought out the skeptic in all of us. So I'll be refreshingly clear and transparent with you. Yes, we will guarantee improvement to your 2021 GCSE outcomes in comparison to your 2019 results. And this is important, Carly, if the data shows that your staff and students actively engaged with SAM Learning and don't make progress, then we will refund every single penny that you initially paid us back into your bank account. And Carly, I can see that your question has piqued the interest of others. So as soon as I mentioned the words actively engaged, I think I received about 7 questions all asking what that means. So I'll touch upon it a little bit further. Active engagement in SAM Learning simply means that your staff and students are using the system enough over the course of the year to see the progress that studies from organisations like the Fisher Family Trust and the Education Endowment Fund have reported on. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love for the exercise bike I bought recently to have significant results considering all of the 10 minutes I've spent on it this year. But the truth is, to get results, the input needs to be there. So let's explore a little bit more about what we mean by active engagement on SAM Learning, because refreshingly, it's all very straightforward and most importantly, easily achievable. So the data would show that if used for at least 10 hours over the course of a GCSE year, every student will see improvements of 1 GCSE grade better in 2 subjects, whereas those that fall under the disadvantaged category will see that improvement almost double to 1 GCSE grade better in 3.5 subjects. So as far as student usage goes, that's all we're going to ask for. that every student uses a system for at least 10 hours over the course of their GCSE year. Secondly, we want to make sure that your staff are actively engaged. So we would expect to see half of your teaching staff and middle leaders setting at least 5 tasks and setting up at least 5 intervention groups on SAM Learning within those 12 months. We will, of course, be training and supporting you along the way free of charge throughout the course of your subscription to help you do so. But then that's it. There's no hidden catches, no small print, no tricks, just the devoted belief that we have in the data provided to us through independent study, showing that if certain criteria are met, then improvement is guaranteed. And again, Carly, your question has continued to bring in more questions. I appreciate that, so thank you. So as soon as I mentioned the Fisher Family Trust and the Education Endowment Fund, I saw a few more questions pop up around the National Catch-Up Programme and also the National Tuition Programme, both of which can be fully supported through usage of SAM Learning by helping to identify current gaps in knowledge, but also to assess how secure or insecure that knowledge is on a subject by subject and topic by topic basis. In fact, our sales team has seen a significant increase of schools purchasing SAM Learning using their national catch-up premium, not only because of the data showing that it will help close the gap and improve GCSE results, but at the same time offer support for all students, not only at GCSE, but also at Key Stage 3 level to help close gaps earlier on in that child's educational journey. So by buying into SAM Learning, you're also going to be buying into something that directly meets the criteria set out by the EEF as far as their 4 strategies for improving outcomes. And from memory, those 4 points are having an evidence-informed approach, an effective pupil assessment and feedback, professional development in the effective use of technology, and then finally extended school time. Okay, yeah, looking at time, it's definitely taken up pretty much all of my question time, but that was a great question, Carly. Thank you so much. But I'm afraid that's all from me today. But as mentioned, I do see the other questions there. I absolutely acknowledge them. So if I didn't get a chance to answer your question here today, I'll keep scrolling through after the webinar ends and get in touch with you all soon after. Thank you, Steph. Back to you.
Thanks, Craig. And that, I believe, brings us to the end of yet another SAM Learning webinar. But before you leave us today, I am pleased to say that we are bringing back our hugely successful school referral scheme. So for any school that refers another secondary to us who go on to buy SAM Learning, we will send a £200 Amazon voucher for each school that buys a subscription. I also want to direct you to the handout section of your control panel again. So I've put in copies of the reports discussed today. Should you wish to save those, I've also put in there an introductory video to SAM Learning, as well as the most recent SAM Learning brochure. Okay, so from Craig and I, we wish you all the very best. We look forward to hopefully speaking to you all again soon. Take care and bye for now.